Om Shanti and good morning. Overcoming anger has been a topic that has interested me for the past few years, and I would like to share with you a story how I became interested in this. Baba reminds us again and again that anger is the second vice that creates so much sorrow in the soul. And a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I had a conversation with a friend who was a scientist, quantum scientist from Cambridge. And I had been going for the past 10 years by then. I had had very severe anemia. Anemia, you understand? And I used to think I'm a strong soul in a weak body, and the body follows me around the world because I do a lot of traveling. And so I just kept going. But my tests were really indicating that my anemia was extreme. And I had this conviction that I didn't want traditional medicine, allopathic medicine, that I wanted to do something different. So it happened so that I started meeting holistic doctors and very, very interesting people from whom I learned many new things about health, about natural healing. But I kind of had this arrogance of thinking, this is very interesting, this is very important, but I didn't follow their advice. I was not doing either the traditional approach for healing anemia or the natural approach. And once I had this thought, if I continue to be careless with my health, only because I'm young and enthusiastic, this anemia could become cancer, leukemia. And that kind of struck me, and I came here to Madhuban, and it was at the time in which Daddy Ji's health was breaking down, and Brother Niver was reporting to us how she was progressing from where she was at. And someone from the Brahmin said, "What about your health, Brother Niver?" And he said, in his kingly royal way, he said, I'm following the exact diet that this body needs. I am having the exact rest that this body needs. And I am doing the exact exercise. You all know, no? That Brother Niver walks for about an hour every morning in silence, and then in the evening he walks again. So he's known for his discipline. And he said, I live in perfect balance. And we all know that he embodies this quality, don't we? He is always in perfect balance. And he said, if we want health as part of our inheritance, which Baba guarantees that we will all have in Golden Age, and this is what we have to claim, our inheritance of health, wealth and prosperity. And there is the aspect of health to do with the soul, which is subtle, but also the aspect of health to do with the physical health. And so he said, if we Brahmins want to go into Golden Age, having claimed that part of our inheritance, we can't just walk to the gateway of heaven thinking that health will be waiting for us at the gate, saying, "Here I am, let's go." Unless you have developed the discipline and the sanskars of being healthy, physically and emotionally, spiritually, then health won't be there. It cannot be there as the return of efforts I haven't made. So when he said that, it really touched my heart, and I thought, this is so true. But I was not doing anything about my health until then. So when I went back to Argentina, I thought, I really have to do something about my health. And I think that whenever we have the honesty and the determination that we're going to change something, drama just conspires in our favor. And so this friend of mine who lives in England, she came to Argentina, and we were having this conversation. She was in Gyan, but was a scientist, very much a scientist. And I said to her, I have this anemia that I have to take care of. And she looked at me with such sweetness, and she said, "Don't worry about the anemia of the body. Once you overcome the anemia of the soul, the anemia of the body will disappear." And I thought, wow, I not only have anemia in the body, but I have anemia in the soul. So what does that mean? So that I became very introverted, and I became an observer. And I started thinking, what is anemia in the soul, for this soul? So I thought, each one of us has a speciality, and Baba has chosen us for that speciality, that which you're just great at. No effort, you just are great. But for the same token, there is also a weakness that is strong. Maybe what is strong in me is not strong in somebody else. Our specialities are all different, we're all unique. And I already had this conviction that it is the soul that makes the body sick. Anything happening to the soul will reflect on the body in some way. And maybe you have this experience here in Madhuban. Suddenly you catch a cold, suddenly you have a sore throat, suddenly you feel that there's some pain coming here or there. And okay, we have to take care of that. We may need help, but don't get distracted with the body. Have a look, what's going on? Because Madhuban is the land of mirrors. It's the land of realization. It's also the land of tolis and friendship and family and good fun, apart from learning and transformation. So a lot of healing goes on here in Madhuban. So when we are going through some form of sorrow, then the immunity system drops. So any bug around could be the reason for my next cold, or a sore throat, or maybe some diarrhea or something. And I will have to do something about it. And I can say it's karma, yes, but what karma is it? Because sometimes we become a little bit too superficial about karma. What am I going through? What is causing this that is happening or reflecting through my body? So I had this, I very much had this conviction that anything happening to the body is coming from the soul. So I started tracking down. My friend said, "You have anemia in the soul." And I said, okay, I'm going to try and find out what it is. So I looked back through my lifetime. What was the vice that I took most sorrow from? So I went right back to my childhood, and I started identifying a pattern, a thought pattern, a reaction that seemed to be like a regular thing in my life. And I realized that I strongly believe in justice. When I was a teenager, I used to consider myself, that I was I used to fight for different causes. And this is one of the beliefs behind anger, that we have to fight to achieve that which we believe in, or that we value or cherish. And so I realized that since I was a little girl, whatever I couldn't get, I would react and fight for. I thought I was being brave, I thought I was being fair, I thought I was being different or responsible. And I could see how the belief built in my system, which reinforced a pattern through which I became a very reactive person. So rather than facing things, I was confronting things. So I realized that out of all vices, Baba says we take sorrow from all 5 vices. We have to overcome all 5 vices. And where there is one, all of them are there. But maybe for some people, attachment is very strong. So they take most sorrow from attachment. For others, maybe they're very ambitious, very greedy. So they take sorrow from that. But for me, it was anger. And it suddenly became very, very clear in my mind that anger was the vice that was hitting my body in such a way that it caused this anemia. So I could say for myself, and this may not be exactly for each one of you, you'd have to do your own journey within. Anemia for this soul was anger. And I thanked my friend. I don't think, then she left her body, she passed away. I don't think she even realized what she triggered in me, because it certainly made a big difference when I realized how much sorrow I was taking from this anger behavior, from this reactive attitude that I had towards, I would say, everything. Because in body consciousness, we react to everything. And so, again, I think that drama put her on my way, but then I always feel that when we are really determined, because then I knew, okay, I have this job, I have to work on this, identify what is anger and how do I overcome. And so the first phase of my journey was rather painful, because I realized all the different ways in which I was being very violent to myself and also to others due to anger. So acknowledging and recognizing what anger is was an experience from which I learned a lot. And it was only that realization that allowed me to choose, because if I want to overcome anger, I have to make a conscious choice that I don't want this anymore. And Baba teaches us, he talks to us about peace, but he equally talks to us about our vices, because unless we realize, unless we develop this deep disinterest in our vices, vices are equally attractive as virtues, don't you think? Why are we drawn so much to ego? Why are we so attached to things? Because we are used to being under the clutch of a vice. And in a way it is attracting us, and there are deep-rooted sanskars. So it became a very interesting exploring time for me. And Mike George happened to visit Argentina just at that time, and he had very, very recently published his book, Don't Get Mad, Get Wise. Have any of you read that book? Have you seen that book? Yes? It was only in English those days, so I thought it was, how could he know that this was exactly what I wanted to know? A book about anger, overcoming anger. And so it took me a while to read it, because it's not just a book that you can read and say, okay, I know it, because accepting that only I can cause sorrow to myself. It is, we can intellectually know this. As Brahmins, we do know this, but accepting it and taking responsibility for it was a different story. I always tell people in Argentina, it's a hard cookie to digest, because suddenly you look back into your life and you realize how much sorrow I have experienced in different ways. And I'm the only one responsible for how much I have suffered. And we could say, yes, it's karma, but then, when we are body conscious, we project on others. So in a way, we feel that being a victim, in a way, makes us feel a bit more comfortable with that pain, because we think that pain is coming from somewhere else, which is outside of me. And it really isn't. And I remember Mike said something that I paid so much attention what he was saying when he was presenting. He was talking to us about this book. Then we got a publisher in Argentina who published it in Spanish, and I was getting so much benefit from reading it that I announced, I created like it was like a laboratory, and I openly invited public and friends, family, different people came. We were about 40. We used to get together every Tuesday for 2 hours for 4 months. And because I was learning so much, I said to them, the book isn't in Spanish, but what we can do is read it together, and we'll experiment on it together. Because one thing that Mike was saying in the book is you don't need to win the Wimbledon Cup to start practicing tennis. So we don't need to be an expert in order to start sharing, because the more we share with people, the more we learn. And so it became such a fun thing to do. All these people, we kind of congratulated ourselves for being there, because it meant, everybody coming to an overcoming anger conversation or workshop or course is someone who is humble enough to accept, okay, I need to work on this. This is my pain. And so it became a very safe space to experiment, and in no time it's kind of, we lost the fear about talking about what was triggering our anger, how we were observing it, how we were overcoming it, and so the sharing became so rich. We kind of did this journey together for 4 months, and it was good learning time for me. And so, where does anger start? And anger is a reaction. Obviously, it's a reaction coming from ego. And what is our choice? When we become soul conscious, we become the observer. And when I am the observer, I can make a choice. And so, in face of any challenge, my option is to respond rather than react. And when we react under the influence of many different negative emotions. And emotions, whether positive or negative, are born in ego. And anger has many faces. Maybe a stereotype or a very common way of thinking about anger is someone who's very aggressive and who's very violent, and whose anger is expressed in a very obvious, visible, loud way, to the extreme of going physical. 1/3 of the world is at war because of anger. So it can become so pervert and violent, but it also has a face which is very invisible, which is called passive anger. And passive anger has many emotions to it. For example, when we become indifferent to someone's presence, someone's needs, someone's contribution to a conversation, or when we have to do something together at the center, at home, or work, anywhere, when we are indifferent, indifference is anger. When we become very sensitive, you know when Baba says, don't become a touch-me-not flower, no? That anything that is said or done or that is happening makes me feel very vulnerable, makes me feel very weak, or makes me feel very unsafe. And you would think that a very sensitive person is a victim of someone who is being aggressive. That would be like a normal or conventional perception. But really, someone who is being very sensitive is angry. Someone who avoids eye contact, avoids communicating, someone who avoids contributing or being present is angry. We had this experience in Argentina of someone who was always, and how would you know that this is anger? It's very invisible. You can't see anything, but the vibrations are felt, and you would tell that anger always creates tension. So even if someone is very invisibly angry, you would feel it, you would know. And we Brahmins are very sensitive in a good way. We can sense things because we perceive vibrations, thoughts and feelings talk to us far more than words. And because this is how we communicate to God. And this is how we learn to perceive Him. So we are very sensitive to negative, very subtle forms of Maya as well. We had this situation in which someone was going through a phase of a lot of dissatisfaction and a lot of discontentment. So became a person who became opposing to everything or anything that was proposed. And if, for example, we were together in a meeting to encourage something that we would collectively agree or we could do together, you know, when you want to create a wave of enthusiasm or something that we will, yes, this is what we can all do. And this soul never said anything. It was never yes or never no. Never contributed to an idea that would, or an expression that would say, yes, I'm with you, I'm supporting this, you know. And so it was like a handbrake. The energy of our agreements is like a machinery that works in a very beautiful, subtle way. And when someone is not aligned or in tune, the machinery is blocked. And especially when the energy is very strongly negative, then the blockage is very noticeable. And so what happens is like, this is called, in the corporate world, they call it passive boycott. When someone doesn't say anything and would walk out of the meeting saying, I never said anything against this, I never oppose or I never criticize this, but there's nothing like neutral energy. There's not a neutral awareness. If we are body conscious, it's negative from A to Z. If we are soul conscious, it will bring benefit to whatever extent there is power and purity. No doubt, but there's no energy that is neutral. So passive anger can cause far more damage than aggressive anger many times. Each one has their own experience. When you're very upset about something and you don't express it. And so, if we suppress anger, that will become some form of illness. And we now know that people who are going through severe sicknesses, sometimes people who have had to transit cancer or who are having this experience now, they can track back a time in which they went through something unexpected or unwanted, and a lot of anger developed in the soul. And because it was suppressed, it became not only an emotional dysfunction, but it became a physical dysfunction. So many people research what happens to the body due to the influence of different types of emotions. And there are some authors that you might have even explored yourselves that can explain like what emotions the liver is sensitive to, what emotions the breathing system, the lungs are sensitive to, the heart, the blood, the bones. And so if the soul is vibrating or emanating negative vibrations, then obviously the body is being hit by that emotion in a way that it will, if we are in a positive mode, then we can heal the body. If we are negative, we can make it sick. So I became very aware of, like as I was telling you, when you're here in Madhubam, unless you're very, very strong, maybe you go through a little sickness. It could last even a day. Some discomfort. But then if you take care. If you need rest, rest. If you need help, take help. Or go to the hospital, whatever. But most of all, have a look at your emotions. What's going on inside the soul? What is it about me that is making my body weak? And the moment I start observing emotions, then I will be able to dissolve them. We all have this experience of, when we all have our favorite provokers, those who press your buttons, and we all know what it is that provokes me most, where my reactive pattern is like a reaction on automatic pilot, and we know it's a sanskar. So if I know that this is anger and I want to change this, and Bab Dada has guaranteed that now if in the morning we decide, okay, I'm going to work on this sanskar, I will need a lot of determination, because if I choose this sanskar of reacting to this or that or whatever aspect of my reactive behavior, it could be avoiding. That may be the way I'm reacting. So I decide that I'm going to face these conversations. I'm going to face this situation instead of avoiding it and avoiding it. We know that if we choose that, we're going to be tested. Not once, maybe several times a day. And Baba says, okay, if you don't manage, by the end of the day, talk to Baba and Baba will help. And Bab Dada's all this season, we can see how much he wants us to pay attention to our sanskars, and he's offering himself completely, he's surrendering to us completely to help us. So we don't need to go on this journey alone. We need to talk to Baba a lot about this, a lot. We sometimes talk so much amongst ourselves, and gossip is another face of anger. Because gossip comes from ego, not accepting, having expectations. So in order to endorse our ego, we look for allies and we have to justify. And so what is an emotion? How is the emotion created? Because we all feel, I would describe an emotion as like, when you feel that the level of water is coming to a certain extent, sometimes you even feel breathless, that you're choking, no? When you feel that something has provoked you, you feel offended or humiliated. So maybe you're in a position, maybe someone who is in a position of authority is provoking it, so you tend to suppress it. but then this emotion is very clearly affecting you in the form of pain and sorrow. And so we victimize ourselves with our own emotions. So how is it created? If anger is only the expression of the reaction that ego is having in face of a challenge. Baba tells us that situations will come, everything will test me. It's only a test. But when we're body conscious, we see it as a problem. We see it as something difficult. If it's someone, then we feel it's an enemy. And it's only really a test. And it's only really about me. But the emotion is created when anything that threatens the ego, for example, if I am identified with something that is not me, for example, I give an idea for Baba's service and it is not acknowledged in a meeting, or something that I have done at the center or for the Brahmin family is not recognized or valued. When I become identified with that doing and nobody appreciates it, so identifying with the doing is an ego consciousness, right? So when I don't feel valued or appreciated, ego is threatened. The identity is threatened. Do you see it? So when the identity that is created outside of me is threatened, ego reacts. And what would be the reaction in this case? The way ego reads this is, nobody loves me. I am so good, I do so much, but nobody loves me. So what is the reaction? Maybe it becomes either I express this dissatisfaction in the form of being needy of people's recognition, or I become like a beggar of affection, or I become like a victim of not being acknowledged or valued. And so I feel unworthy of people's love or people's, recognition, I would say. So this is a reaction, but maybe it's not expressed, but it's there, and I'm taking sorrow from that. So maybe I'll start doubting and say, maybe I don't need to do so much. Maybe who cares? Nobody cares or appreciates what I do. You see? And this is an ego construction. Maybe I'm identified. Baba says that our two main enemies are I and my. So when the identity of I is threatened, there's reaction. And the reaction is an emotion. And anger, it's expression. But it could also be possessiveness. If this is my idea and I want this to get done this way, and somebody, you give an idea and some people ignore it or even crush it or even break it up into many other things, if I feel, you see, this is ego is threatened with what I'm identified, which is a my. Maybe the way I did something is being criticized. That's another my. And so the reaction coming from ego will be an emotion. So whenever there's I and my, there's bound to be some emotion involved because it's coming from ego. So if now you say, okay, let me observe today, what are the patterns of my reactions? Maybe I can't change them. Maybe the sanskar is too strong. Okay, but can I observe them? Can I do that much? Can I now stop and observe and say, okay, this is an emotion. This is making me feel very uncomfortable, or very weak, or very unsafe. Whatever the emotion is. So, the moment I become the observer of the emotion will start to dissolve. And you can try. You can try. And this is what Baba teaches us. When we become so conscious, I'm the observer. And even if the test is there and things are happening, if I am the observer, I won't be affected or touched by it. And there is, when the moment I am observing, I have the choice. And this is when I can say, okay, I will respond. Because in soul consciousness, I will respond. I will not react. And let me tell you that not reacting doesn't mean that you kind of, you're tied, your hands are tied like this and you have to surrender. Because it's not about fighting, it's not about winning a battle, because peace does not fight. Peace is. And so being who we are, we can respond. And it's very interesting. I've done many experiments with this. And Baba is now telling us that we need to observe the mind, heal the mind, control the mind, clean the mind, empower it, and use it more and more for service. And I've been doing quite an interesting experiment this year in terms of anger, because all conflicts are due to some form of non-acceptance of something, because anger is always resisting something that I'm not accepting. And anger is the illusion. Anger holds the promise that I can control that which is impossible. And what is impossible is to control others or change the past. No? Even if someone says something and I get upset by that, I would be trying to do what? To change the past. And if someone has already said it, I can't change it. And I would try to change someone's vision of me if I'm upset because people are criticizing me or are opposing me. If I get upset, the promise within this emotion is that they shouldn't do that. They should be thinking different. They should be appreciating. They should be talking positively about whatever. So, and this promise is never fulfilled. Because can we change the past? Can we change others? Can we control others? We can't. We can't even, maybe we haven't even developed the ability to control ourselves, never mind others, no? Anger is the loss of control. So, when I start understanding what is happening when I get angry and what anger is all about, then I kind of lose the fear of anger. Because anger is a form of fear also, no? Every time I get angry, there is a fear that I might lose something. Either I might lose control, or I might lose the point that I want to get across, or I might lose, I don't know, the chance, you know? And if somebody else gets a chance and I get upset about that, it's because I feel that I have lost something. And really, we can never lose anything, because really we can never possess anything either. And this is what Baba is trying to teach us, no? This my is the illusion. And so, but it's good fun to explore. And I found that at the beginning, as I told you, it was a bit painful, because I had to kind of recognize and all these emotions and things. But when I see it's coming up, when I see that I'm in face of something that would typically provoke me, I can stop and observe and ask myself a couple of questions. Because one of the beliefs that anger holds is that I am upset because of you. That this anger is about you. And so we blame, we project onto others. And in this way, the ego is endorsed. And so, if I can, at that moment, okay, something is happening here. Someone may be ignoring me, or someone may be insulting me, or provoking me, or challenging me in any way. And so, if I can see what happens inside me, and I stop and say, okay, what is happening right now? And I would be able to tell myself, I am coming under the influence of an emotion. I am getting upset, or I am becoming irritated, or I am becoming very impatient. Anxious is another face of anger. Okay, that is what's happening. And then I can ask myself, where is it happening? Because if I am body conscious, I would think that it's coming from out here. But if I can observe, where is this wave rolling? It is inside myself. And if I ask myself, who is creating it? Just these questions. Just experiment on these questions. I have done lots of experiments on this. And it's just amazing. You see, I am the observer of the emotion. I am able to talk to myself. And the questions are bringing light. And if I am able to accept and acknowledge that I am creating this for myself, no matter what is going on here. Sometimes I could be equally upset even if someone isn't beside me. Or nothing may be happening and I could be upset anyway. That's easy, But normally we feel that we are provoked by things, so we feel, okay, how could I respond if I'm being attacked in this way? So it's like ego has its own logic, if you have to defend yourself. And peace doesn't need to defend itself, because peace is the power. So, if I'm able to observe, I will dissolve, and you will observe that if the emotion was like water coming up, once I start talking and observing, you'll see it's as if like the waves go out back into the sea again. No? And it's such a relief to realize that, okay, I'm responsible for the emotion, but I am free to dissolve it. And it's not about this person changing, it's not about this person not looking at me like this or doing something different, it's about me. For me, when I reached this realization and I started experimenting on it, it became such a relief. And then I thought, okay, one thing I learned from Mike, he said, things happen, but they happen for me, not to me. Think about it. Things are happening for me. Baba says, drama will test us. Everything will test me. It's happening for me to grow, for me to emerge the potential that is hidden within. What is the use of my peace if I don't use it when I need it? And peace will be expressed in many different ways according to the need. Its expression is so colorful. Then I'll tell you about a campaign we made. We call it the colors of the soul. Peace are the colors of the soul. So it is so interesting and so fascinating to realize that I can be free from the influence of anything happening around me. And then I realized that I was only ever my enemy. Nobody ever was. That took me a while to accept, that I never had an enemy. That the only, and this is a concept, we BKs have heard this, nothing new. But have we realized it? Have we accepted it? No? Have we taken responsibility for knowing that nobody ever does anything to me? It is only, always, ever me. And I thought, wow, I haven't loved myself for so long. Because for however long I thought that I was a victim of this or that or the other, I was being very violent to myself. To different extents. And I remember, I've been in Baba's knowledge for 25 years now. And when I first came into Gyan, I was living at a center and I was having many clashes with a sister who was running the center and the country, Argentina. And I came to Daddy Janki. Those days, we used to have many personal meetings with Daddy. So Daddy would have a long queue outside of her Indraprasth in Madhuban. This beautiful place didn't exist those days. So we used to go to Daddy, we used to complain, we used to cry, and Baba used to, when he used to come and meet us, he used to come every 3 days, and he used to say to Daddy, Daddy, do they still cry when they go and talk to you? and so I remember I came to Daddy, and I was being so emotional. I came and said to Daddy, Daddy, you know the sister at the center, she treats me so badly. She's so cruel, and I was in tears. And Daddy looked at me and said, but she's your friend. And, I couldn't say much more. I left and I went back saying, Daddy didn't understand what I meant. She didn't get it. And then I realized, not those days, but now having gone through the journey that I have gone through, I realize how many people during my Brahmin life, during this amazing journey, have helped me to learn. And very recently, about 5 or 6 years ago, we went through some jamela, some chaos in Argentina about a lot of disunity in the family, and different people did different things. And there was a lot of opposition. And this became a big test for me. And it was at the time that I was starting to work on this anger. And so I started observing. I did take some things on board for which I hurt myself. But then I also realized that each one doing what they're doing will get the return of their action. That I didn't have to react in terms of taking the law into my hands, in terms of taking revenge. And I went into a phase in which I became kind of passive. I looked very passive, but believe me, I was working a lot internally. I did go through a crisis of deep lack of self-respect, to the extent that I thought that I was not very good doing what I was doing, and that I thought, why did Baba ever think of me for what I'm doing? And then I realized that this being submissive and feeling pity for yourself is just another phase of anger. And so I realized that I had to build my own self-respect. And I realized that I had no enemies. And I started observing what happened to the life of all the people who were creating chaos. They were in total upheaval. But to my surprise, I realized that because I was working internally with my own feelings, it's as if I was able to separate what was visibly a conflict. It had passive ways and it had aggressive expressions. But because I was being able to separate this and dissolve my feelings, I was able to withdraw my contribution to that. And what was my surprise is that I started feeling a lot of compassion. And suddenly I realized that much of the conflict that I had gone through, whether it was subtle or visible, was my imagination. What I felt. Things are happening. Mike says, things happen, but they happen for me, not to me. And I realized that the whole process that we went through allowed me to give a big leap in my Brahmin life. And I realized that I started observing a bit in retrospective, and I thought, what was it that bothered me so much? What was I fearing that I made this soul or this situation like an enemy, that I was fighting with an illusion? Anger is always an illusion. And I realized, then I started being very objective, and I said, what these souls do is good. Their service is good. And I remember meeting Brother Ken once and said, I have no complaints. I have no complaint about the individuals. I have no complaint about the group or the service they were doing. And I realized that I had dissolved my own feelings, my own negative feelings. And then I'm wondering, what of all that was true? I could see that when there's a conflict, obviously you need two hands to clap. So each one was creating their own negativity within, and each one has to deal with it. Nobody can do it for you. And I could see that all the individuals involved went through a lot of chaos. And because I was doing the healing work within, I was able to help. And with one of them who was open to talking to me or to coming close or whatever, I was able to help a lot, consistently. And I realized, and I thought, how amazing, what a journey, because here is a soul who is opposing in a very negative way, and a couple of years later, I find myself genuinely and honestly trying to help that soul. And it's not because the soul changed that I changed. It's because I decided that I had to do something about myself, and that only I could do it. Because whatever I went through, it was not their fault. It was only ever me. And so the seed of anger is the thought that I choose to think. So Baba is now drawing our attention to many methods that can help us to overcome anger. And one is checking. So if I start checking and seeing what is my contribution to this situation at the center, or with this one or the other one, maybe at work or with your Lokik family. And if there's any form of discomfort, what am I bringing into the relationship? What kind of thoughts, what kind of feelings am I creating? And even once we identify the patterns, we know things are coming. And they will stop coming in the form of a test when I'm able to overcome. And I'm able to overcome the influence it has had with which I was affected. So really, when I see how much help Baba is giving us now, I think and I feel that I'm talking from a space where it's not that I have overcome anger, I'm on a journey, but I don't feel anymore that it is difficult. And Bab Dada has given us the homework to stop, to put a full stop in a second, and this is very, very helpful. I was just an experience very recently that when normally I come to Madhuban, when I talk to someone that I need to talk to, normally I'm snapped back. Doesn't matter what I say. And so I was practicing this full stop. So I thought, normally in that situation I would feel a victim because it's a power position, so I cannot snap back. It's not what I would want to do anyway. But so I say, okay, I just accepted what the conversation finished. So I stood up and I said, okay, what's happening? This is the victim sanskar. Or for whatever aggression someone is doing, they have to take care of that. I'm only responsible for the victim sanskar. I said, okay, full stop, this is it. And we have to stop, we have to choose something else. So practicing to put a full stop, don't allow the emotion. What I would have done in the past is like I would have walked out of Daddy's cottage feeling a victim, that how unfair, going past, and it might have lasted for months. And then the imagination builds on and it rolls on like a wave, and it takes dimensions which is completely unreal. So this method of putting a full stop, if it's gone all the way to an emotion, then I've got to stop the emotion. But even if it's just a thought, so I think that the time here in Madhuban is really precious. March seems to be like a very calm time in Madhuban and precious. In the month of February there were many meetings and different things happening. So I think that for all of you this is such a unique opportunity to experiment on these methods that Baba is giving us. And overcoming waste requires us to be very, very interested in what is useful to us. So this is good time for churning and exploring. So this is what I can share about overcoming anger. I feel that I have made a choice, and although I still have reactions, I can immediately look at it, and sometimes I just laugh at myself. And I've identified my favorite provokers, and they change because once you realize, when Maya, Baba said, once Maya is discovered, then she'll come in a different way, and anger can be so subtle. So I'm having fun just exploring this and working on this, and I realize that I have gone a long way, and many things have changed. There are lots of things that I still need to do, but I feel that I'm enjoying my life a lot more, and I think that a key to that is taking responsibility for myself, not being needy of others' expectations, and accepting things as they are has been another very important aspect of this process of letting go, is to forgive. And in forgiving, it's not so much that I need to forgive anybody else but myself. But then I have to, because sometimes when we blame ourselves, we can be harder than when we blame others for what we feel. We can become so autocritic in such a destructive way. And so forgiving myself for the pain that I have taken from my behaviors and my reactions has helped me a lot as well. Like, well, it's okay, Baba forgives me. And if I can forgive myself, I will be able to let go, and ultimately I'll forget. So I can move on. And every day is an opportunity. I have a blank space. And Baba is telling us, if you don't manage, then come back to me, and at night, don't sleep with it. together we'll do something different tomorrow. No? So I think this has been a good learning time. And Miraben asked me to share with you something that I would consider became a gift for us in Argentina. And it was an opportunity, really. When I returned in March from Madhuban, one of our students, who owns an advertising company, he came up to me after the Murli and said, I can print 100,000 blessings for Baba. And I said, 100,000 blessings sounds like a lot of blessings. so he said, you have to decide what the text is going to be, because we only have 3 days to print. And the next day he said, we can print 500,000. And I said, 500,000 sounds like a lot more. and so he said he was producing a packaging for some product that had a gift for the World Cup, for a big company, for Unilever actually. So he decided in all the blank spaces of the sheet of paper that was going into the printer, you know, when you cut out the packet that was going to be created, all the blank spaces he was going to use for Baba. It was going to be waste anyway. So he decided to use it. And so I said, look, we can't have too many blessings. So it sounds like we are campaigning something and we don't know what it is. And so about a week went by and he said, well, look, I've calculated that the format of what we're going to print is this. I don't know if you can see it from there. And it's like 11 by 6. And we can get 16 different cards. And we can do 760,000. So at that point, we thought, okay, what homework did Baba give? Because he was giving us no time to decide what this campaign was going to be about and how we were going to do it. But I could just imagine these loads of cards just floating into our center. And so we thought, well, the homework that Baba had given us was to overcome anger. One of the things he said in the last Murli in March. And so do you remember when he said, you have 15 days, then he said, you have a month, and he said, do it for 3 months, and by the way, since you're going to do it for 3 months, why don't you do it forever? So we took that. And we said, okay, if we're going to do this homework, let's do it with the people, let's do it with our community. And so I happened to be going to an event for some companies. It was a human resource seminar, and the facilitator of our panel, or the moderator of our panel, was a senator, a good friend who came to Peace of Mind here. And I was sitting beside her, and I said, we had been churning with the Brahmins after class, what could this campaign be called? We need to decide that now. And so we thought, okay, think positive, don't get angry, be positive, something like this, which was kind of very basic. And so I asked this woman, this friend of ours, I said, what do you think about this for the name of our campaign? And she said, let people choose to be calm. And so Choose to be Calm became the name of the campaign. And we had nothing written, and so I ran to my room, and you know when we get these beautiful little packs of cards in Madhuban? And so there was one in Spanish, so I gave this advertiser a couple of these packs, and he chose this one. In fact, it's one about when we change, the world changes. I think they sell it here in Madhuban. It was written here in Madhuban. It was translated by Mexico, and we adapted it to this campaign. So we thought that we would campaign overcoming anger. And so Choose to be Calm is about helping people to overcome fear and anger. So we chose from that pack, he said 16, so we chose 16 virtues and powers of the soul. So it's called a campaign of virtues and powers of the soul. And people are very struck by this. People are fed up of listening about values, at least in Argentina. I don't know about your countries, but in Argentina, values doesn't say much to anyone anymore. So virtues of the soul sounds like different. And so this brother had us going to his studio, and we had all these creative people with their Macs, and so we had to find the images. So I went with a brother, and they said to us, speak to us about these virtues. What do they mean? And so whilst we were telling them what patience means, and so we gave them examples so they could get the images, because we needed immediately these free of charge images from Google. So patience, for example, is a woman learning how to use her computer at work, and the person who is helping her is very young. So we chose these images that would bring people, would give people the feeling that these virtues are just very practical, they're hands-on. And then flexibility is a young man. We imagine he's trying to work with his laptop on his lap. He's sitting on the floor with his cell, and his 2 little children are sitting on his computer. So it's a typical situation in which he would become violent, get out of the way or something. So flexibility is about this. And so we chose very kind of interesting images. So he ended up producing 1,600,000 cards. So our center is full of cards. So we took this idea in June to Peace Village, where we meet with the Americas, different countries from Latin America. And we said, look, we have a lot of cards, so if you would like to join this campaign, you're very welcome. So they took it on board. So 10 countries in the region took the campaign. And so what we're doing is we are telling people that when we choose to be calm, we are safe. And so we're telling them that when we use our virtues, when we use our powers, it is the expression of our inner peace. And it will take the form of whatever we need to do. And so we tell people, like, you may be in face of something. Argentina is becoming extremely violent. So people are afraid of walking alone in the night or going to certain places. And so this insecurity is increasing all over the world, of course. But we address people like this, telling them, you may not be able to control what people do. You may be going to cross a very dark park and you're alone. But if you can keep calm, if you can remain calm, you will have the clarity to know what you have to do. But if you lose your calm, you will be afraid and you will be confused. You might take a decision that could cost your life. And when we went to some advertiser, he said, UBKs have a response to something that no one in the world can guarantee, and that is to the big issue of insecurity, how unsafe people feel. And we tell people the government won't protect you, your insurance might not protect you, but God will protect you. So if you can keep calm, and so obviously we will introduce Baba at some point, and what we have found is that nobody resists the campaign. Because nobody can tell you that they don't need calm. Nobody can tell you that they don't get angry or that they're not afraid. And so we are finding that this has been accepted it is a campaign that is directed to all fields, for schools, for NGOs, for corporate world, for the government. And we're doing it in 12 cities in Argentina, and there are 5 cities in which we only have one sister on her own doing Baba's service, and they have had the courage to go up to the city council of their city and present the campaign, and the government endorses the campaign and it considers it of interest, cultural, social, government interest. So they declare it like this. So they get free venues, free advertising. They're getting so much help. In one city, the city council, the mayor said, "Let me organize the launch." And so he came to the launch. He went with her to the radios to advertise the campaign. They gave her the venue. They paid for all the expenses. And she's there on her own. And all she has to do is, so what we promote as BKs is the Overcoming Anger course. And any other course. It's just an umbrella to offer Baba's courses or seminars or workshops, whatever you want. And so we created a website, and we just took some from our books because everything had to be done so quickly. So and now we are improving the website. But in Costa Rica, for example, in Central America, the transport office took it, and they created a little video about driving, being calm when you drive. So on the bus stands, everybody, when they're waiting for the bus, they're watching this little video of some two little cars. It's a cartoon. When they're about to crash, this one, instead of getting angry, has a thought. And what you see is a flower flying into the other car, and the other one looks at the flower like, what's this? And so the two cars continue, and then the one that nearly crashed, the other one, someone else is about to crash him. And so he has a thought and sees the flower, and so he sends the flower across. It's just a thought. It's such a funny little cartoon. But it became something that it's a message, and it's on the bus stands, and people, and so different universities and different organizations have joined the campaign, and all we BKs have to do is be a spiritual resource with our courses. In Ecuador, the police force, when Sister Mohini was there, they launched it, and they asked the BKs to train them to be responsive rather than reactive. You see? So you can, if you're interested, these cards are available. I'll give you some packs after the meditation. You can come and get the cards. And so for us it's been a gift because it involves no costs. And this brother was so kind, because when I came in October and some people showed interest here, so Mohini Ben said, okay, you can present it when you come now. So he kindly had the cards done in English, and he had some candles for the press kits done with a little pack that says, "Keep ignited the flame of experience." And then he did some t-shirts, "Choose to be calm," and we made them green so that they can be used for Baba's Green Initiative now as well. And so if any country or any center wants to take it on board, we will be posting all the information, how to use it, on the website. But one interesting aspect of this campaign for us is that we involved our contacts, our main contacts and friends. Contacts have been around for a few years, and they love the BKs, and they come to retreats, they come to Madhuban, they're always hanging around when the seniors come. But it is time they get involved in Baba's task, because they also need to create their fortune, and they also need to claim their inheritance. So once we started sharing with some people about this campaign, we had a meeting. There were several BKs and a few friends, like 5 friends, and I said, who will lead us with this in Argentina? And a young girl from Unilever, she said, I will lead you because I'm an expert in branding. So she coordinates our national core group, and the national core group has 10 contacts and 2 BKs. And so they have all these ideas of what we should be doing, and they get people involved, and they bring their contacts, and they go to the media, and it's, we just see it happen, and it is clear for us that we are the messengers. So they can have fun, they put it together, and they pull us in when they want us. They pull us, they say, Moira, you come and tell us about the anger, how to overcome so, and then they do the rest. And it's quite interesting. And another interesting thing that we have changed is that normally, suppose you have a senior visiting you, and so you have a date and a speaker. So you go around trying to find your venue, and you have the date and the speaker. And so if a good place that would normally help you doesn't have that date available, then it's a no. So we decided to go the other way around. So we go to organizations and we tell them, would you like to join this campaign? And they say, what can we do? And they say, well, if you want to offer your venue, any date, any time is good for us. So we're getting free venues, free auditoriums, because our senator in Parliament, she offered us, at the House of Parliament, they have a very nice auditorium, so she gave us 4 dates. They said, look, we have these dates free, what time is good for you? So we just, rather than having the date and the speaker, we have the days, we have the venues. So we invent an agenda. So we have a date here and a date there and a date there. So we say, who can do here or there? So it's fun, and we get free venues, we get free cards, and if any of you was interested, you can go to your printer and tell them on the blank space of your products, if you go to a printer or a publisher, blank space of the book covers, there are 4 colors, 2 colors, doesn't matter. These are 4 colors. We called it the colors of the soul, and you can see that they chose to make it very colorful, you see? So they think that the virtues of the colors of the soul expressed. And so it involves no cost. When people tell us, what can we do? We don't need to buy anything because we have free venues. There's lots of us to do what we want to do. And in this we have also managed to find a way in which we involve our friends and contacts doing, not only, organizing something. There's a journalist who introduces us. They MC all our programs, and it's not the BKs have to talk about the BKs anymore. Baba says somebody else should say how great we are. It's not that we should be the presenters, no? And so they're having such fun talking about what it is, why we do it, how we do it, and they introduce the BKs. And then some of them are teachers who were trained with the Living Values program, or they have different expertise. They may be consultants in the market doing their own things, whether it's in the field of communication or values, whatever. So they have their own workshops. So Choose to Become is an initiative of the Brahma Kumaris to overcome violence, or for non-violence. And so these people, they can do with us. They can do their workshop, they can do their lecture, they can be on a panel beside us. Because if your contacts come and tell you, we want to run a workshop, you wouldn't normally have them running their workshop at our centers. But there is a way in which we can do it together, and they find this so fascinating, that they're doing with us. So maybe we do, if it's a lecture, we may share it with someone, or they interview us, or we interview them. And so it's become a very interesting way in which we engage our friends, and we also take their help. So we're trying to divert our energy, not to use Brahmin energy in logistics. Let them do, and we give the message. And now this year it's all about media, and so we have an advertiser has he's done the radio phrases for radios, and then he's done some advertising that we can, spots that we can have on TV. And now when we go back, we're doing street advertising. So, and this is all for free. He gets friends to record for free, and he gets, everything is produced for free. He calls us my new client. So he tells his people, we are now working for peace. And he told us, because we had him on a panel at the launch, and he said, my company is very much used to campaigning things for NGOs, so we work for good causes, but this campaign is doing something to us. it's working on us. So it's very interesting. Normally they work for others, but the message and Baba's campaign is working on them. So now what we need to get, we have someone who is giving us money to print these big billboards, big printing. And so in one city where there is a sister who's alone, the government offered on the main avenue all the advertising that belongs to the government. They offer it to her for free for as long as she wants to put this advertising. So we're just seeing the magic unfold. And as I was telling you what Mike said, we don't need to win the Wimbledon Cup to start playing tennis. So we tell people, it's not that we have overcome anger, but we're on the journey, we're learning, we're sharing, and so we're doing it together. And in a way it has, I see that approach of us being humble, we know that Brahmins have a lot of anger, and that there's a lot of tension in our centers. But if we're honest with people about ourselves, then they accept us in a very nice way. These people, they're not lecturing us, they're not selling any, they're not, in Spanish there's an expression like selling, I don't know how to translate it, but like, they're not telling us a theory that they don't use themselves. And the more we come across with our own personal experience, the more it impacts them and encourages them and say, well, if the BKs are going through these things and they're overcoming, then we can also do. And so we feel that our contacts have become closer, they're becoming, and now we are starting to give them a lot of gyan, because they realize, they say, well, but this, how do we overcome anger? So now they want to know. So now when I get back, we have a Choose to Be Calm retreat. So all the people from the different cities are coming together and see what's next. And we only go step by step. There's no formula. You can do it however you like. We will put all our info on the GF, the Global Functioning Portal, that you will be able to access through your centers. So if anyone is interested, the cards are here with me. After the meditation, you can pick them up if you're interested, and just play with it. So Om Shanti.